I have heard numerous theories about why the American government is providing so much support to immigrants, while many Americans are homeless and housing insecure. Um, what do you think is fueling this mass movement of financial support for newly arrived immigrants in American cities?
They're not immigrants, they're illegals. And what's going on is very simple. You have this situation set up by Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. It says every 10 years there shall be a census conducted, the primary purpose of which is to determine the apportionment of representatives in the House of Representatives. We call them congressmen, in other words. So I participated in no less than 5 census takings as an adult. This last one in 2020 was the first one. They did not ask whether I was a citizen or not. Also, it's the first one where they did not inquire as to the status of my parents, what their status was. See, heretofore, what went on is they said these are the citizens, this is the population of the United States, and we have another category of people who are not citizens. This time for 2020, they combined them. What's the purpose? Well, so California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, etc., will not lose congressional representation and will perhaps gain representatives. In other words, if you build up the population of California, they maintain the current number of congressmen, or they might gain one or two, but the people that are being counted toward this gain or retention cannot vote. So there are what I call local yokels, New York and a few other places, California, places like San Francisco, where they have an Asian who is not a citizen who's sitting on, of all things, the election commission to determine for San Francisco how the votes are counted and such like. There are locals that are trying to generate this thing. They also are trying to bring in people who are susceptible to a new agenda, which is to impose the rainbow cult on the country. It is a new religion, and in order to understand its religious nature, contemplate Buddhism. Buddhism is an ancient and honorable religion, but it does not have a deity, no God. Same thing with LGBTQIA. Not homosexuality, but this cult that's represented by the rainbow. You cannot teach Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism in an American public school, but you can teach rainbow. Kids get taken to Sunday school, the church by their mothers, and they sit through bored to tears for an hour or 2 hours, a few Sundays out of the month, and by the time they are 6, 7, 8, 9, they are devout believers in whatever the religion happens to be, whether they went to church, synagogue, or mosque, or temple. But what you have is the rainbow being imposed 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, preschool all the way through 12th grade. So they are indoctrinating people in this rainbow thing. And it is a system of philosophy that deals with nihilism. In other words, self-hate. You don't like what you are. You want to be something else. There are no standards, duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, purpose, cause, morality, ethics. All of that goes out of the window. And you get rid of those guiding principles that have controlled and directed humanity since we've been here. You get rid of shame and guilt. Oh my God, we have to get rid of shame. Somebody dealing with shame online. Oh my God. And you see, when you get this kind of thing, you get rid of the human control mechanism. Shame is good, guilt is good, it causes people to behave. But we've got this cult that's attempting to put this in place. So what they're trying to do is recruit followers. And that's why politics looks so crazy today, is because it's not about the ordinary things, which are what do you get for your vote? What kind of economic background or environment are you creating? What kind of thing about the options that a government will exercise? You're getting in place this thing where the primary elements are destruction of masculinity, where it's anti-manhood, anti-womanhood, anti-childhood, anti-nuclear family, and setting up something else. The prototype that you're getting in place to run this, you can see by what's going on down in Georgia right now. Fannie Willis is a classic example, the poster child for what's supposed to be imposed on us in terms of leadership. That's whether you're talking about Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, whether you're talking about Cory Booker, whether you're talking about Lori Lightfoot. This is what is to be put in place. It's not affirmative leadership. It's administration to push an agenda. And see, what we're getting away from in our cities is the leadership that can get out on a street and say, follow me, and people will go along behind.
Judge, I have a quick question, right? So what do they plan on doing with the citizens that are already here?
Screw them. You know, like Richard Pryor joked 40-something years ago, he said they're getting them some new Negroes. I don't use that N word, but new Negroes, so to speak. And we also have another thing, too, going on here. One of the big problems right now is we have surplus labor. And there are not enough jobs to go around on a level commensurate with the expectations of the public in terms of what people ought to earn. So there is a concurrent movement to acclimate people to being dependent and taken care of so they don't want to work. And two, to get rid of what's surplus, you put them in the labor warehouse, which is known as a penitentiary. And additionally, you have a problem because there are some entry-level employment positions that you do need to get filled. And when the process of cutting people out of this labor market through their own mental attitudes works, you get, hey, man, I ain't flipping no burgers for no Mickey D's, man. I got my B's and H's, man. They take care of me. And what you need still is somebody to fill that function. Now, in terms of illegals, I had a ranch out in California at one time. You could always tell when the subcontractors had brought in illegals to do work. They showed up early. They didn't take the morning break. They got an hour for lunch. They take 20 minutes. They don't take the afternoon break. And they stay 2 hours extra. And since it's a ranch and you always had fruit trees around, they'd ask if they could bring a couple of coolers of cervezas, beer, and have a couple of limes, and they'd have a happy hour, and they'd have a player, and they'd be out by the barn somewhere doing this, and they would get the work done in half the time. Meanwhile, their uncles and nephews and cousins and brothers who were citizens would be as lazy as anybody else. So they need some effective labor. So that comes in. And then see, the other problem is computerization and industrial technology have made a whole lot of people obsolete. For the first time in human history, your labor doesn't count because they've got a machine that can do it better. So what happens is, what do you do when you have a surplus in your labor units, meaning your workers? Think of labor as a commodity, like wheat, corn, or cotton. When you get a glut in the commodity market, there are three things you do. One, you cut back production. Two, you subsidize the would-be producer. And three, you store the surplus. And perhaps a fourth thing, find an alternative use for the thing. All right, when it comes to labor, you store the surplus not in a grain silo. You store it in a jail cell instead of a grain silo. The subsidy is welfare check. Cutting back a production is you get the youth to ideate on the wrong things that are dysfunctional. In other words, they drop out, bang out, drug out, get knocked up too early, too often, develop inappropriate attitudes, outlooks, worldviews. They don't have any vocational skills. They don't have any educational, academic foundation to go further. they clown, carry on, and make where they live islands of chaos, so those islands cannot engage in collective political self-help. People can't go out because they're worried about getting ripped off, robbed, raped, or whatever the case may be. Now, part of that process is getting a person to think in the wrong kind of fashions. And you can see it right now where we get this woke thing where everybody whines about white supremacy holding you down. Well, when you get people to thinking that they can't do anything because something has held them down and they blame this something without being able to focus on what's necessary to counter it, then you have achieved your goal. You have made them think of themselves as impotent, so they are unable to function, and they acquiesce in what's going on and they just bitch about it. Man, white supremacy holding us down, man. Like, they gonna do everybody like they did Black Wall Street, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, what are you gonna do about it? Well, see, 55 years ago in the late 1960s, people were talking about black power, power to the people. Get out my way, I'll do it myself. Now everybody's talking about when you're gonna cut the check. Reparations would not be a bad thing, but it's kind of like saying, hey, if I just win the big lottery, everything's going to be all right. Yeah, of course it would be, but what are your chances of winning it? And why do you insist on voting for a party that is diametrically opposed to granting you what you want because they've got another agenda that they want you to fit into and support that has nothing to do with you? You're getting pimped. That's like a wholesaling behind, like what she got out the deal. Her own money back in part. She earned it, the pimp's using it. Gives her a little bit back and claims he's protecting her when he's exploiting her. And Lord knows I used to represent enough pimps and hoes 40-something years ago when I was in private practice.